24th of February 1986, Sherry Rasmussen felt like she didn't feel like going to work that day and thought about calling in sick. At 9:45 a.m, a neighbour noticed that the garage door was wide open and it was empty, with no car parked inside.
God damn it.
Her
Phone's doing a software update.
made multiple attempts to call her home, but no one answered. When John returned home from work that evening, he noticed the open garage and the missing car.
Garage.
Felt like something wasn't quite right. He walked cautiously into the living room and found his wife, whom he just married for 3 months, lying dead on the living room floor. It was a disturbing scene. Sherry was dead on the floor of the living room.
He's like,
Sherry
bruh,
had
not chill.
3 times, and there were signs of a struggle. She lay on her back on the brown rug, her face swollen, battered and bloody. She was barefoot, still in her red bathrobe. So how did this all happen? Let's go back to where it all started. It all began in the early 80s at UCLA, where John Rutten, a mechanical engineering student, met a political science major called Stephanie Lazarus. Both were avid athletes. John was a keen runner, and Stephanie played for UCLA's junior varsity women's team.
Isn't there a JCS on Stephanie Lazarus?
On multiple occasions, but John never considered the relationship as anything more than just fooling around. The couple were never exclusive, and both John and Stephanie dated several other people during their time at college. But despite this, Stephanie showed early signs of obsession. While he showered, Stephanie would often steal John's clothes, and at night she would take photographs of him naked while he slept. John was often unsettled by her unusual behavior, but the pair had great chemistry. So they continued seeing each other after their time at UCLA. After graduating, John accepted a job at a hard drive company, and Stephanie applied to the city's police academy and became a uniformed officer with the LAPD in 1983. John later met Sherry Rasmussen, a graduate of Loma Linda University, who was on a fast track in critical care nursing. She entered college at 16, and by her late 20s was the director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, giving presentations and teaching classes for fellow nurses. At one point, Stephanie threw John a surprise party on his 25th birthday, unaware that he had developed a serious relationship with Sherry. When she learned he was seriously involved with Sherry, Stephanie was devastated. Soon after, depressed Stephanie visited John in his condo and asked him to sleep with her one last time for closure, which, despite being engaged, he reluctantly agreed to. 2 days later, Stephanie visited Sherry in the hospital. She walked out to tell her that things weren't over between her and John, and that her and John had slept together again. The confrontation at the hospital then escalated and got highly aggressive, with security having to be called to control the situation before being escorted off the premises. If I can't have John, no one else will. And the intimidation didn't stop there. During the time that John and Sherry were engaged, Stephanie visited their home on multiple occasions. At one point, Stephanie came to the couple's apartment in revealing workout clothes and asked John to wax her skis, which he reluctantly agreed to. Several days later, while Sherry was home alone, Stephanie returned to the apartment to pick up the skis in full police uniform, with a handgun strapped in. Sherry became deeply unnerved by the visit and pleaded with John to tell Stephanie to stop coming by. In November of 1985, John Rutten and Sherry Rasmussen got married. On the 24th of February, with John at work, Stephanie once again headed for the couple's apartment. She picked the lock and entered the property, and as Sherry realized Stephanie was there, Stephanie fired a shot at her from a .38 caliber revolver. The shot missed, shattering a window behind Sherry, and she ran. But Stephanie chased her down. Sherry was tall and strong. She stood over 6 feet tall and was in good physical condition. But Stephanie was a police officer, trained for combat. She was caught in a cage with a predator. In the struggle, Sherry managed to get Stephanie in a sleeper hold, but Stephanie bit Sherry's arm, forcing her to let go. The signs showed the struggle likely went on for several hours, with over 50 separate injuries inflicted upon Sherry during the savage attack. In Sherry's final few moments, Stephanie wrapped a quilted blanket around her gun and fired 3 muffled shots into Sherry's heart, face, and lungs. Once Sherry was dead, Stephanie got to work, making the murder look like a home invasion and robbery gone wrong. The LAPD bought the story and hunted for an armed robber, not knowing that the real murderer was right under their noses. There was no leads. The crime
Yeah,
scene
fucking
did not
nut
leave any
job.
physical evidence. No hair, fiber, or blood evidence to connect to a suspect. Only a swab of saliva on a bite mark on Sherry's arm, which was later kept in the records. Days after the slaying, 2 men robbed another woman in the area at gunpoint. Homicide detectives suspected that the pair had also killed Sherry when she came upon them burglarizing her home. The search for the men led nowhere. Like thousands of other homicides from the period, the case remained open and collected dust on storage shelves as detectives struggled to keep pace with LA's dramatic surge in violent crimes. It seemed like Stephanie Lazarus committed the perfect murder. The case went cold for at least 23 years. In the early 2000s, with homicides in the city falling to historic lows, LAPD detectives have had unusual freedom in recent months to visit cold cases. DNA technology had also made significant advances, and the LAPD began looking through forensic evidence collected from cold case files. However, it wasn't until 2004 that a criminologist, Jennifer Francis, looked at the bite mark sample taken from Sherry's arm. Although it didn't match any DNA in the database, it did reveal that the bite mark was made by a woman, thus disproving the theory that it was a burglary case by 2 men. Detectives scoured the original case file for mention of any woman who could have been overlooked during the investigation. They found a reference to Stephanie Lazarus, who was known at the time to have had a romantic relationship with the victim's husband, John Rutten, with suspicion falling on an LAPD cop. The case took on sensitive and explosive tones inside the department. A special operations team staked out Stephanie and her adopted daughter on a trip to Costco, and after they had snacked at a table outside the store, the team retrieved the cup and straw Stephanie had used. 2 days later, the lab confirmed that the mouth on that straw was the mouth that had bitten Sherry Rasmussen's forearm in a violent struggle 23 years ago. On the morning of June the 5th, 2009, shortly after she sat down at her desk on the 3rd floor of LAPD headquarters, Detective Stephanie Lazarus was told a suspect in the basement jail had information on one of her cases. She went quickly downstairs. The decision to take Stephanie Lazarus downstairs in the Parker building for questioning before arresting her was made for 2 reasons. Officers had to check their weapons before entering the downstairs jail, and the detectives wanted to avoid some kind of armed standoff if she suddenly turned violent. The interrogation of Stephanie Lazarus is one of the most fascinating tapes that has ever reached the public domain. The distinguished LAPD officer, sitting in an interview room, believing she had been called in to give advice about a case, not knowing that she was actually being interrogated for a cold murder she had committed decades ago. All this time, she thought she had gotten away with it, but that morning, she walked into a trap.
The future of thread locking is here. VibraTite VC3 ThreadMate is advanced holding technology that's reusable, adjustable, and won't crack. VC3 ThreadMate from VibraTite.
Yeah, I'm looking home at work. Hey, great. How's it going? Moving around. Well, this is I don't want to bring this up in the strategy. Oh, no, it's fine. I think we're good. Yeah, well, I can explain the whole thing to you. I don't want to talk about this in the squadron because I don't know if people are listening. And if you go to my site, everybody's always wondering what everybody's doing. Okay? But after we're talking about being business, but we're going to sign the case that we're going to do. Okay, it's a new case, and reviewing the case, there's some notes to see as far as your name being mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Do you know John Rutten?
John Rutten?
Rutten.
Oh, yeah, I went to school with him.
You did?
Yeah.
The detectives at this point already knew how to say John Rutten's name correctly, but they simply wanted to see how Lazarus would react to hearing it mispronounced. A psychiatrist later noted that the pause was 4 times longer than it should have been. John Rutten was the second longest relationship in Lazarus's life, and she would have made the connection almost instantly, even when slightly mispronounced. She would know exactly who the detectives were referring to, but hearing his name, she began analysing the situation in front of her, leading her to act cautiously.
How long did you know him?
Gosh, I went to school in, let's see, went to UCLA in 1978 I started, and, you know, met him at school at the dorms.
Were you guys friends, close friends?
Yeah, we're very close friends.
Yeah.
I mean, what's this all about?
Well, it's regarding, it's a case we're working on, and it involves John, and in there, some of the things we reviewed, there's notes and stuff that he knew you and stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were good friends, lived in the dorms for, I was in the dorms for 2 years.
You guys lived in the same building?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, Dykstra.
Okay. You guys just friends or anything else, or?
Yeah, we were good friends.
Yeah. Was there any relationship or anything developed between you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we dated, you know.
Lazarus dated Rutten for over 4 years, and the detectives knew this as well. If she were being entirely truthful and transparent, she most likely would have volunteered this information when asked. Instead, she makes an attempt to cover it up, knowing that the stronger her ties to Rutten, the stronger her ties are to the case.
I mean, what's this all about?
Well, it's relating to his wife.
This is the moment that Lazarus realized that this isn't about an art theft that she'd been led to believe. Try and imagine that you brutally murdered the other woman in a jealous love triangle, and now you're sitting across 2 senior detectives in an interrogation room suspecting you of the murder. Lazarus's body would have been shaken to its core, her heart racing increasingly, and muscles tensing. This combination of stress reaction, also known as fight or flight, is a physiological response that helps someone fight the threat off or flee to safety. However, she's cornered with no option of escaping the threat without appearing guilty. Her only option was to fight, mask her facial expressions, and appear calm by answering the questions as vaguely as possible.
Over?
Not really. I mean, I knew that he got married years ago.
Did you ever meet her?
God, I don't know.
Do you know who she was or anything?
Well, I think, God, it's been a long time ago. I may have met her. Geez, you know.
You'll notice here
Jeez,
that Lazarus
you
is
know.
attempting to avoid answering the question by saying, God, I don't know. It's been a long time ago. She appears not to be able to remember simple details like these, where it's usually quite easy for us to remember if we've actually met someone or not. And by saying that she may have met her, she's not confirming or denying that she had met her. She does this to avoid giving the detectives any information which may implicate her further.
Well, let me ask you. You said you dated John. How long did you guys date?
I mean, what, are you guys, is this something, I mean, you said that I was going to interview somebody about art, and how
Well,
you guys are, I mean,
Stephanie, here's the situation. It's basically,
Lazarus is clearly aware that she's now being interrogated, and she became more defensive about it. This reaction is actually normal for anyone who was brought into an interrogation room under false pretenses, only to realize that it was probably something far more serious. You would think that a seasoned police investigator that has been in the force for over 20 years would have an advantage in these interrogations, as they would know their own process. However, sitting on the opposite side of the suspect is entirely different, and one that she was not trained for.
we knew that this, when we saw this in this chrono, that maybe, there was some relationship there. That's what the chrono seemed to indicate, and we didn't want to come up to you at your desk and ask those kinds of questions or do anything. You know how up there people can see what's going on if you go into an interview room or people are in there getting
that's
supplies.
okay. I
And
mean,
so we wanted to afford you some privacy, some confidentiality
Okay.
to talk about this, because we thought it might be, something, you're married to someone else, obviously, and so forth, and that you may not want to, talk about these things in that setting where someone, we don't want the rumor mill or gossip or any of that kind of stuff
I
to
mean,
start.
that's fine, I mean,
So we did this just as a means to try and speak to you in
Okay,
just
I mean,
a
I
confidential
just-
place where where your business isn't out there for other people and
well, I mean,
your division to know
I
about.
mean, God, that's been a million years ago. I mean,
The interview done today was rehearsed multiple times, as they knew that they're interrogating one of their own. The detectives were very cautious with the language they used to ease into the interrogation and kept it casual. The strategy was to keep her talking long enough
Super
to avoid
cash.
bringing up any evidence such as DNA until a more critical moment. You'll notice at this point, the detectives reassured her that the reason they had brought her down there for an interview is actually for her benefit. Lazarus was experienced enough at this to have realized by now that she was being played. She might have just stood up and walked out, but how would that look?
What year is it now? 2009? I mean, I graduated in 82. 82, yeah. You know, we dated. I dated other guys. I'm sure he dated other girls.
Well, let me ask you, roughly how long would you say you guys dated?
Jeez. I couldn't even say. I mean, I started school there in 78. I started UCLA in 1978. I graduated in 82. I don't even remember what year he graduated, if it was a year or two before me.
Okay.
I think he was a little bit older than I was. I mean, you know, I can't remember if he was born, let's see, I was born in 1960. I don't know if he was born in 58 or 59. I mean, I knew his parents, I knew his sister. His brother went to Northridge. You know, his sister had spent the night at my house before. Obviously, I'd spent the night at his house before. He probably spent the night at my house before. You know, I don't.
What?
The detective asked her an open-ended question. This gives Lazarus the flexibility in how she wishes to respond. It's commonly believed that people with nothing to hide are likely to give a short and concise response to these type of questions. For example, if Lazarus was completely innocent, she could have responded in 2 short sentences. We dated for 4 years, or we dated for several months. On the contrary, if Lazarus has something to hide, she is more likely to give a lengthy and detailed response. You'll notice how she can't seem to recall roughly, not exactly, but roughly how long they dated. Oddly, she was able to give a recital of dates, names, and events directly following that statement. She seems to have a selective memory, where she's very good at retrieving the dates, the names, the event. Until it's inconvenient for her, you will notice that she'll continue to have
Cat
selective
jam.
memory throughout the interrogation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because what you're telling me is you guys dated while you were in college together, right?
Yeah, and probably after college. I can't. Geez, trying to think when I met my husband. I met my husband before that.
So you haven't talked to him for a long time?
Oh, I think I haven't talked to him in a long time. I couldn't even tell you when the last time I talked to him. I met Scott, I'm thinking in 92 maybe, April of 92.
Scott being your husband.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
You'll notice how Lazarus can remember when exactly she met her husband, including the month and year. Not their wedding, but just the meeting. But oddly, she's unable to give a rough estimate of when she dated John.
Teaching there. I got married in 1996. I think I met Scott in 92. Prior to that, I couldn't tell you how long I had talked to John prior to that.
But since you met your husband, Scott, you haven't talked to him?
I mean, he may have called me once or twice before we got married.
Right.
You know, geez, I moved to Simi in 1994 because I lost my house in the earthquake.
Oh, really?
Quite honestly, I probably keep in contact with a few people from the dorms. We all lived on the 10th floor, and there's about 3 or 4 people I keep in contact with. There's probably like 6 or 8 of us that were all really close.
And who were
Bet.
the people?
Oh, geez, Diana Basta. People I still keep. I haven't been in contact with her in a long time. I mean, what's this all about? I mean,
Well, let me ask, what is the relationship between you and John?
After going off on several tangents again, Lazarus asks for clarification why she's being questioned a second time. However, the detectives cut her off and asked her about how they ended their relationship.
you know, it was kind of a weird relationship. I mean, we dated. I can't say that he was my boyfriend. I don't know that he would consider me his girlfriend. We dated. We did things. I played sports in college. He played basketball. His brother played basketball. We just, you know, it just, didn't work out. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It was like, I went out with other guys, saw other guys, I went on lots of vacations, you know,
I'm gonna work on some little stream stuff, so I probably won't be glancing. I'll glance at chat, but I'm gonna put back a few.
no, I don't think it was not friendly. I mean, we were friendly. I know that we went to Hawaii at one point. Another friend of mine who's actually dying right now was went to Hawaii with us at some point.
And we're both in that.
Let me see. I have to check my pictures. Or I'd say I'd ask Greg, but my friend Greg is like dying of liver cancer right now.
Then she says she has to look at the pictures just to remember a general date. Remember, they're not asking for specific dates, just a general idea when she went to Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean,
And you were saying that,
it's 2009 now.
had you ever met his wife?
I may have.
Do you remember her name or anything, or? Or what she did for a living, or where she worked, or anything about her?
Notice how Lazarus's facial expression changes as the question is posed. When asked whether she had met Rasmussen before, or whether she remembered her name, Lazarus would have known the answer instantly. She almost certainly would have thought about Rasmussen and the day of the murder almost every day now. So once again, Lazarus had to give the impression that she has a hard time remembering. And when asked what Rasmussen did for a living, Lazarus also pretended to think about whether she knew the answer.
Well, I think I'm going to say I think she was a nurse. And I can't remember how he said he met her. I mean, it's been so long ago.
Lazarus was able to easily recall the names, dates, and events when they're not related to the murder. They happened so long ago. Yet she was able to retrieve them almost immediately. But when asked about things that relate to Rutten or Rasmussen, she conveniently can't remember.
You go to their wedding,
No, I didn't go to their wedding. No, did not go to their wedding. I didn't tell you what year he got married. I mean, it's been a million years ago.
Do you remember if you ever talked to her? Because it seems like a lot of you who were at the school at UCLA, you guys kind of were friends during and after school, so I don't know if you guys still associated afterwards once you got married or anything.
With him? No, I don't think so. I mean, I would say, the people go on the dorm floor. We did get-togethers. There's probably like 4 or 5. I don't think he ever came. I don't think, no, it was mostly girls. A girl named Snita, Diane. There's 2 Dianes, but the one Diane, I don't think she ever came. I kind of lost contact with her. We were good friends on the floor. I mean, I don't, again, I mean, what? I don't understand why you're talking about some guy I dated a million years ago.
Here, Lazarus acted oblivious and downplayed the situation by saying it happened a million years ago. It's not even relevant anymore. Why would you even ask me about this? Guilty suspects often act oblivious to these situations as a means of avoiding the situation altogether, whereas an innocent suspect tends to immediately inquire about the situation and seek explanation to the questions. For a third time, Lazarus asked why she'd been questioned, but the detectives ignored her concern and posed another question.
Do you know what happened to his wife?
Yeah, I know she got killed.
What did you hear about that?
I saw a poster at work. I'm sure I spoke to him about it.
She's sure she spoke to him about it. The woman who can't remember the last time she spoke to Rutten is sure she spoke to him about it.
I can tell you when the last time I talked to him.
A major inconsistency, and the detectives clearly took note of this.
I think I spoke to another friend of his about it.
And how did you first learn about that?
Geez. Someone could have called me. I could have heard it at work. I think at one point there may have been a flyer or something. I know a good friend of his.
Were you on the job back then when that happened?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm sure I was on the job. That's why I would have heard about it with the flyer. He had a good friend, Mike Holdridge, Mike. I don't remember how I heard. I mean, I don't even remember what year it was.
This was an interesting bit, because Lazarus started listing random possible ways that she first learned about the murder. She continued to be cautious, not giving a direct answer to protect herself from saying something that would implicate her. But try to imagine for a second that if your ex-boyfriend's wife was murdered, it would be very difficult for you to forget how you heard about it, even if there were multiple ways that you could have heard about it.
I think you said you thought his wife was a nurse. Do you have any idea where she was working at the time, or did he ever mention that to you? Was it a hospital or a doctor's office?
I'm
or?
sure he must have mentioned it. Now that you're bringing that up, I think she worked at a hospital somewhere. And yeah, I may have met her at a hospital. I may have talked to her once or twice.
Does this still work?
You know,
Being that you're kind of used to see John.
Is that not an emote anymore?
You guys?
It is.
Maybe anything uncomfortable or anything between you and her?
Why doesn't it show up as an emote?
you know, I don't know. I mean, it's been so many years. I mean, uncomfortable. I mean,
Huh.
I can't even remember if we had a conversation. I mean, we may have. I may have seen her at his apartment. You know, geez, how many years ago was that? I don't even know what year she, got killed.
Lazarus continued to downplay her conflict between her and Rasmussen. Although it was many years ago, this certainly would have stayed in her
I'm trying to make some more bot commands for the chat and some other shit like that. I need to make a few more scenes too, like for just chatting and stuff.
Whenever Lazarus is asked questions pertaining to the murder, she employs an intelligent tactic to deal with these types of questions. Lazarus frequently refers back to past events, suggesting that they may or may not have happened. For example, she's already said things like someone may have called her. I may have found out through a flyer.
Let me know if the sound
In a hospital.
ratios are good.
She does this to avoid giving detectives any information which may implicate her further. It's a clever tactic that Lazarus uses repeatedly throughout the interrogation.
On Roscoe.
Okay.
Yeah, Roscoe and either east or west of DeSoto.
Do you know where he moved after? Did he move after he got married, or do you know? Or
Oh, I'm sure he did.
did you know where he was living, or?
Somewhere in the valley?
Did you ever visit him and his wife?
No.
No? Never
No.
went out to, get together, dinners,
I
anything of that nature?
no.
You'll notice that she has an expression of fear, which caused her to pull her head back, literally pulling away her face and neck from the threat. There are millions of reasons why you're probably not one to admit that you're at someone's house, especially when that someone has been murdered. But on top of that, there are
Long
other
boy,
reasons
you
why
incel
you
ass.
don't want to be seen visiting an
It's not even the title anymore.
It just wouldn't look good.
Sister used to come over. His sister had come to my place. I knew his brother because his brother played basketball at Northridge. In fact, I was just coming across some pictures that I just scanned from. I take a lot of photos, like 10,000, and I just did a service where I scanned everything.
How long was John married before his wife died?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
After his wife died, did you talk to him again? Or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I did talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to him, probably his parents, probably some other friends.
The fact that she did talk to him confirms a contradiction from her earlier statement, saying that she couldn't remember if she did or not. Let's take a note with the knowledge that she did in fact talk to him. Obviously, she did this to avoid giving information that she didn't want the detectives to know.
I'm sure I talked to him.
Yeah. But you're not sure where he moved to after he got married?
No idea. I mean,
Never went over to visit him, or?
I don't think.
meet
I
his
mean, I
wife,
don't
or-
think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I did. I honestly, I don't know. I don't think so. But
Okay.
I don't want to say no. I don't think so. And then he says, "Oh yeah, she came over for something, dropped something off."
I need to edit these. I should probably resubscribe to this because you get like 60 if you subscribe.
You're saying drop something off, or?
Maybe.
It's like $5 a month.
But you don't remember as far as like going there to have dinner or like a social, anything at the house, party?
Well, if you guys know something, I can't. I don't know. I don't think so.
That's what's probably running through her mind right now. How much do these guys know? Do they know something incriminating? Are Are they trying to catch me in a lie? A good way to counter their strategy is to have selective memory when answering these questions. But it's only what guilty people would do.
I mean, but
After John's wife died, and you said you may have been talking to him, did your relationship start up again?
I would say no. Again, can you give me a year? I mean, this is like 2009.
He died in 1986?
Yeah, I think it's 86.
1986.
Okay, like I said, I'm faintly remembering that I went to Hawaii with my friend Greg. Greg and I got certified for scuba diving.
Did you?
I got pictures. Like I said, I couldn't tell you years. It's been a million years ago.
After he got married or whatever, were you dating anybody in particular? Like,
And that was what?
someone
What
steady?
year? 1986, you said?
I think he got married,
Yeah.
in around 85, 86, something like that. Were you seeing anyone seriously, or?
I couldn't say. Geez, I'm trying to think. I mean, you know, I dated a fireman,
What was his name?
Mike Garn, and I'm trying to think
Was
when
he
I met him.
LAFD or?
He was LAFD.
Mhm.
Trying to think when I probably met Mike. I went to Devonshire. Let's see, I left Hollywood in 80, I worked Hollywood 84 to 85, I think. And then I went to Devonshire, and that's when I met Mike. Mike and I dated, you know, just really kind of casually.
Uh-huh.
And we remained good friends.
You still in touch with him, or?
Unfortunately, he passed away.
Oh, really?
He died in he had a car crash. He did race cars, and
He
went
did
into
race
a wall.
cars.
I couldn't tell you what year that was, but he passed away. He was in a coma, and they pulled the blood.
Right.
Anyway, all three. I mean,
Did you
know,
guys socialize, like when you were out with Mike, did those guys come out with you too? Was it kind of like, did you do stuff with
No,
like his
actually-
friends, or?
Well, there were three. There was two firemen, Eric and Gary. I met them first. Then they introduced me to Mike. So that's how I met Mike, and Mike and I dated.
Mm-hmm.
This whole section is very interesting because we get to see how she normally acts when just telling a regular story totally unrelated to the murder. She was able to recall rough estimates of when she met a certain person and even who introduced that person to her. She reviewed her dating history, ticking off the men she had seen in her youth before she had met her husband, and making sure that John Rotten was seen as a blip, just one in a fairly large group.
You're getting back to some stuff. As far as you recall, after John's wife died, did you start a relationship again with John, or dating casually, or anything like that?
Like I said, he met Greg and I in Hawaii. Okay.
So she did meet John. We can now check that off the list. And also keep that in mind, just in case she tries to contradict that later on.
That was something you guys kind of planned together, like go as a group, or you ran into him? Or?
No, I think that obviously I must have talked to him, and I said, hey, I'm going to Hawaii with my buddy Greg. We're scuba. We just got certified scuba diving. We're going to be in Hawaii. Hey, if you want to come and join us, come join us.
Right.
And I think that's what it was. I may have asked some other people to as well. I don't know what to tell you on that.
I mean, when you heard about John's wife being killed, I mean, what was your reaction? I mean, you thought you heard about what, through a friend or in a bulletin or
Either
something?
a friend or a bulletin. I called the family. I called maybe some of his friends that I knew, and I mean, obviously it shocked to hear. If I heard it at work, you know, which I know of, I faintly remember a bulletin going around. Either that or somebody called me. I also don't remember.
See if this one works.
And then I called probably.
What did I
my
make it?
family, called.
Yeah.
I can't say if I initially spoke to him or not. I honestly don't remember. I may have said to somebody, hey, have him call me if he wants to talk. And then he may have done that.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Do you know what the circumstances were? regarding her death?
Geez, let me think back.
Let me think back.
I don't
Yeah.
know if it was, if it was a burglary or something. Yeah, I mean, it's been so many years. I mean, I can faintly think that I may have saw a flyer.
Yeah.
May have had her picture on it. I may. That's why I say, if somebody had called me, I may not have known what her last name was. I may have. I mean, maybe if you told me, I would remember it.
Remember the first name?
Shelley, Sherry.
You'll notice that Lazarus earlier mentioned that after Rasmussen was killed, she called John's family and spoke about this with them.
They called the family.
If you called someone's family to talk about a recent murder, there's a high likelihood that you would have discussed the actual circumstances of the murder. Oddly, Lazarus claimed that she doesn't remember it.
Like I said, it's been so many years, and
From all the years, as far as you can remember, you don't, do you remember ever talking to her?
well, it's just, I said earlier, I mean, I may have, I may have talked to her.
Yeah,
It sound,
You mentioned a hospital name.